afternoon, everybody. Thanks so much for joining us. My name is Dr. Micah Kohles. I'm fortunate to work with Oxbow Animal Health, and you are here for another Facebook, Instagram, Vet Chat Live party, right? You guys have again knocked it out of the park with an awesome listing of questions here. Certainly want to get to as many of those as we possibly can. I actually just got off another education event with BunFest, which is the Ohio House Rabbit Society and other groups. Their kind of bun event there, which was really cool. Shared some information, had an awesome group of people, just like you, wanting information relevant to their rabbits, wanting to improve the way we care for them. So, as is always the case, we appreciate you taking the time, appreciate you sharing information. We're going to get to as many questions as we possibly can, but share information with each other. You know, this doesn't have to end in this half an hour that we're here together. There's a lot of great information online, a lot of great information on Oxbow's website and other forums, the House Rabbit Society, so on and so forth. The more we know, the more proactive we can be. So let's dig right into it here. I've got a question from Angie Milner. Miss Milner said, my 9-month-old bunny only likes alfalfa. That's not a surprise. I know it's not the best now that he's older, but I have tried all things and all other hays. Today he finally ate a couple pieces of orchard hay, but now he's not getting that hay in his diet. Is it okay to continue with alfalfa or an alfalfa orchard mix and hope he just doesn't pick it out? So the first thing is that this is his finger and this is you wrapped all the way around it, right? No, I'm just joking. We know that it's difficult sometimes to make that transition, especially from a forage like alfalfa that tastes good and it's aromatic and they love it, to go over to grass hay. And some rabbits do that without question. Some of them are like, Mom, what are you doing to me? What we also know is that there is a nutritional difference. Now, is it from here to here? No, it's more like from here to here. Alfalfa's still got a good amount of fiber in it. The problem is that it also brings with it protein and extra calcium. And in a young growing rabbit, that's important. It builds those long bones, it builds that musculature. But in an adult animal, which your munchkin is becoming, it's just more of those nutrients than we really, really need. And it can actually lead to problems. So the key with that is being consistent in the transition. Now, is eating some alfalfa for a couple of months or 6 months as you work towards this, the end of the world? Absolutely not. But it still needs to be the goal that we're going to get away from that alfalfa as a staple component of our diet and really just focus on the grass hays using alfalfa as a treat. A couple of little tips that people have given me over the years is to cut the hay up into smaller pieces and mix it up. You mentioned orchard alfalfa mix. That's a great option. Even something like a Timothy meadow hay that's got Timothy and orchard and alfalfa all mixed together. As you slowly increase the grass hay, you slowly decrease the alfalfa content, and hopefully they'll be less likely to notice that. You can also take a little bit of their favorite green or their favorite veggie and kind of puree it and mix it into almost a little salad bowl or a mash. Another great way to kind of diminish their sensitivity to noticing the texture and hopefully begin to get them onto that grass hay. Now, if no matter what you do, no matter how hard you try, the munchkin is that stubborn, alfalfa certainly still does provide some beneficial fiber, and minimally we would want to continue to do that. But don't give up. Keep fighting, keep working at it, and I suspect if you keep trying, you're going to find a grass hay or some type of a mixture of grass hays that's going to potentially work for you. I'm going to move on to a question here from Liam. Liam said, we have a 5-month-old Holland lot who does not like to be picked up, which makes cutting her nails pretty impossible. We can't get her into a bunny burrito because she doesn't like to sit still and she's so quick. How else can we cut her nails? Or should we let the vet handle it? Well, first of all, remember, at a 5-month-old, what you've got is a crabby, stubborn, opinionated teenager. And if she doesn't want to do it, she's probably going to battle with you tooth and nail to prevent you from doing it. The first thing that I would suggest to you is to really step back and lay out a process to get there, right? We can't go from here to the bunny burrito overnight if she doesn't like it. We want to slowly work to desensitize her sensitivity to her feet especially, and any type of confinement. Also remember though that rabbits are prey species. So in her little mind, she is thinking, I don't want to be wrapped up. I don't want to be pigeonholed in this corner because what does that mean? I'm potentially at risk. That's a threat to me. So understanding that natural behavior and slowly working through positively desensitizing her and getting her used to that is probably your best route. In the meantime, the more active you can keep her running around on the floor, running around on harder substrates like concrete floors or tile floors, that will actually help to mechanically wear at those feet as well, or those toenails. Play with the toes, mess with them, get her used to the towel first, then laying the towel. Just slowly work through a process. Now, if the nails are truly overgrown, which can happen at that young, not always, but it can happen, I would probably work with your veterinarian to get them trimmed and under control in a safe manner. Unfortunately, because rabbits have such a natural response to run away and they have a delicate skeleton, I've unfortunately seen traumatic issues such as fractures of different bones when rabbits are trying to escape. We want to trim the nails, but we certainly don't want to risk that as well. So keep working at it, desensitize her, slowly get her used to different steps, and I suspect that eventually you'll get there. So here's a question from Lauren. Lauren, thanks so much for joining us live. I've got a rabbit who sneezes all of the time. I brought him to my vet, and the eyes and the nose look clear and great. That's awesome. Could rabbits have allergies to dust and to Timothy? I've got a HEPA filter. Is there anything else we can do? Well, the first thing that you did that's most important is we want to rule out underlying disease, right? We know rabbits are obligate nasal breathers, so they breathe through their nose, and they breathe through all these nasal turbinates. So that if there is disease there, that's a big deal, and we want to identify that right away. Knowing your vet looked up there and didn't see anything is a good thing. That doesn't necessarily, though, completely rule out an underlying problem. So it's a good place to start, but we still want to keep communication with your veterinarian ongoing if that potentially worsens. And especially if you begin to see any discharge from either nostril, whether that be blood or purulent debris or serosanguinous, any discharge, especially if tied to changes in the respiratory pattern. Now, if you don't see any of that and it just continues to be this sneeze, I would absolutely do what you're just talking about. Let's look at the entire environment and see if we can identify some change that may be indicating some type of a sensitivity. Now, at least here in Nebraska, where we went to 90 degrees and 80% humidity, and then 2 months later we're at 30 degrees and 30% humidity, that is a significant change in the environment that we're in, leading to a lot of dryness, right? Pollens and dusts and other materials that are in the air. And in an animal that breathes only through their nose, that can cause inflammation and irritation. Now, sometimes they'll overcome that, their bodies will adapt and they'll get used to it. But if there is a specific hypersensitivity to dust, to mold, to pollen, and while I've not personally seen a rabbit truly allergic to Timothy, I'm not going to say necessarily that couldn't happen. So look at that environment and start to take certain things away. Did you change the bedding? If so, let's go back to the original bedding. Did you change the caging location? Is it now next to a heat vent where they're blowing hot air on the cage, or next to a window where it's drying things out? Did anything change in the environment that you can tie to that time frame? And if so, let's back the train up and go back to the way that we were. As far as for hay, we know hay is dry. We know there's dust associated with it. So try to take that hay away from the environment and open that bag up and let it breathe inside of a plastic tote. When you first open that box or that bale or that actual package of hay, there's going to be more dust. So loosen that hay up into a plastic tote, like a Tupperware or Rubbermaid tote, outside of the environment from your rabbit. I also think adding a humidifier is a smart thing to do. This is the time of year where everything is drying out. So to add a little more humidity into that air, especially in the environment where their habitat is, where they sleep, may help to kind of moisturize and kind of hydrate the upper airway and may decrease that sneeze as well. If you do all of those things and the sneeze progresses or gets worse or you see discharge, don't take that lightly. Talk to your veterinarian again. We may need to consider some more aggressive diagnostics like some imaging of the actual nasal cavity or the oral cavity, looking at dental disease or other types of problems associated with that. Thanks for the question, Lauren. Good luck. I hope things go well. I'm going to slip on to another question here from Emma Beauchamp. Hopefully I said that right. Emma said, my rabbit has a little hair loss on the lower back. Her activity level and eating and pooping has not changed. Eating and pooping is essential. That's good. Is this something to be worried about or to get checked out? I've also checked in for any type of bugs, and I can't find any. She is free roam. So anyway, first of all, we noticed a change. That's number one. And it's just like something I always recommend of getting your hands on your munchkin, doing that owner physical exam once a week to look for lumps, look for bumps, look for hair loss. So good job noticing that. You also are probably aware of what your munchkin's normal shedding pattern is. How often do they shed, and what pattern do they shed? Some rabbits shed their entire body all at once. Other rabbits start with one area and then gradually shed or partially shed across their body. Is this different than what a normal shedding cycle can look like? Next, I want you to look at the skin. We know the hair is gone. We don't want that to be, but what does the skin look like? Is it inflamed? Is it irritated? Is it ulcerated? Is there redness? And then lastly, does it seem to be bothering her? You've alluded to that it doesn't seem to really affect her. If she's not itching and not scratching at it, that's certainly a good thing. If the skin looks normal, her attitude is good, I would probably just monitor it for a little period of time. If it begins to get more progressive, or certainly if the skin looks irritated, infected, or inflamed, Or if she starts to bother the area, I would definitely get with your veterinarian. Even though you physically looked at that, there are parasites, mites and other types that you can't see with the naked eye. And those sometimes can cause hair loss even without significant inflammation. So there's some tips, some tricks to think about. When in doubt, give your vet a call, talk with them about it, and they may suggest just taking a peek at it. All right, so here's a question that comes from Amanda. Amanda, thanks for joining us. I would like to know, my bunnies have dark poop after eating pellets. Is this normal and what should I do? Should I be worried? They are 11 weeks old and I feed them complete pellets as well as unlimited hay. Well, first and foremost, you're doing a great job with nutrition, right? And when we think about fecal output, that is the byproduct of oral intake. So what we eat is going to go through our body and there's going to be a byproduct associated with that. The color, to some degree, the actual kind of aroma that can go along with it, even sometimes the shapes themselves can certainly change from time to time. If you're not seeing blood, or if you're not seeing mucus, or any sign of an infection, or irritation, or painful defecation, and that's what their stools have always looked like, I wouldn't necessarily be concerned about it. That may just be attributed to the specific ingredients that are in the actual pellets that you are feeding. That being said, if you do see changes in other behaviors, changes in appetite, maybe you see some stools that are enlarged or malformed or contain abnormal mucus on the outside, that can be an indication of an abnormal imbalance of the bacteria in the hindgut, which may or may not be associated with their pellet, but could be an early indication of other problems. Always look at patterns with rabbits. If you've been feeding the same pellet and their stools have always had that natural variability, a slightly different color, I wouldn't necessarily worry about it. But if something has changed, especially if that's connected to a clinical behavioral change, that is worth talking to your veterinarian about. In terms of nutrition, when we offer different grass hays and different types of greens and even different types of pellets that are made up of different nutrients, that will almost always lead to a change in stool production. Not necessarily production, but potentially color, consistency. And so again, you got to keep that in balance. If you offered a new treat, if you offered a new green, I would honestly expect that to lead to a slight change in their stool. But as long as their activity level and attitude or appetite are good, I wouldn't necessarily get too concerned about that. All right, we're having a ton of awesome questions. I love all the participation. Keep them coming. I'll work hard to get to them, as many as I possibly can. So here's a question from Corrine Venable. Hopefully I said that right. We have a female who's fixed and a male who's fixed. They currently live in separate areas near each other, not touching but visible. The female has been spraying over her litter box in the corner towards the male. How can I make the bond more smoothly for both of them? What can I do for her? Well, you're doing the right thing to start. And one thing that you didn't allude to, but is important, is how long has this process already been occurring? We want them to hear each other and smell each other first. Then we want them to see each other and actually be able to interact in a protected environment. And a lot of times I'll take literally 3, 4, 5 weeks just for that, what I call howdying process. Let's get them used to each other. Now, just because she's spraying urine doesn't necessarily mean that she's mad or she's upset or she's going to go in there and try to kick his butt. That could just be her social cue and interaction. And if you haven't gradually put them together, I would think about doing that if they're not exhibiting other negative behaviors toward themselves. I personally have found a lot of success of taking them into an environment that is new to both of them. So if they're in one room of the house, maybe we can take them into the wash machine room or the mud room or the kitchen, a new environment in a small environment, and let them explore that environment together. Sometimes it takes their mind off the fact that, wow, you're new, oh my God, what's that? Let's go over here, and diminishes the likelihood of that negative interaction. Just because she's spraying their urine, though, doesn't necessarily mean that's a negative thing. It could just be another factor of her communicating and going through that bonding process. At this stage in the game, though, if they've seen each other and not had negative interactions, I would think about moving to that physical component and seeing how they work with each other. Always supervised, short, direct interactions, and then go from there. I applaud your efforts, though, to get them to bond. The sooner we can get them to bond, which they'll eventually figure out, the happier and healthier they're both going to be. Awesome question. All right, I'm going to move on to another question here. This one comes from Chris Nutt with Cotton. I don't know what that means, but it sounds funny to me. Neutering and spaying, is that good for a bunny? I'll make this question and answer easy for you. Heck, yes. Not only is there behavioral benefits, but there are numerous medical benefits. Many of you have probably heard me talk about that in female rabbits, they have upwards of a 60 or 70% chance of uterine adenocarcinoma, a horrible disease a cancer associated with their your uterus, the reproductive tract. If they're neutered or spayed at an early age, they're not going to have that disease. Find a good qualified veterinarian who has the right experience, the right skill sets to be able to do it. Get your munchkin neutered early on in life. All right. Got another question here from DL Camden. Thanks so much for joining us. I've adopted a few bunnies who have typically licked me. My new bun I've had for a year has yet to be very comfortable enough to lick me. Does that take time, or do some rabbits not show that as a sign of infection? Interesting question. How they interact with you and how they communicate with you is going to be just as individual as how you interact with other human beings. That is what is unique to them. Some rabbits do through physical contact. Some rabbits do it through binking. Some rabbits may even do it through licking. I wouldn't necessarily take that as a negative interaction. If you feel positive about the overall interaction and the kind of the human-animal bond you have with that munchkin, I wouldn't get too caught up into what is the specificity. Now, if they're doing other things that indicate potentially oral pain or discomfort with their mouth, then we would certainly want to have that explored. But simply not doing that one behavior, even though other rabbits have, if they're a happy, healthy munchkin, you have a positive relationship with them, I personally wouldn't get caught up with that at all. Good question. All right, so here's a question that comes from Pitchuopi80. I'm sure I said that wrong. My bunnies always fall asleep when I pet them. Is that normal? It's not a deep sleep. They wake up short when I'm after petting them. Should I be concerned? I think you are doing what rabbits love, is you've found the magical spot. For a rabbit to get so comfortable that when you're interacting with them and petting them, they're getting to the comfort point that they can literally daze off and fall asleep. That means they trust you. That means they feel completely comfortable in that environment. And that is absolutely, in my opinion, a positive sign of the environment that you've provided for them. I think if you can continue to do that, that is all about that human-animal bond. And when they're at that point, they're not worried about anything else. They're in a happy place. Good for you. All right, so here's a question from Lydia Fairclough. Miss Lydia, thanks for joining us. I'm keeping my 13-week-old dwarf rabbit, non-neutered male, in the house, but he is not taking to litter training. Is there a good way to do this? Good question. First of all, again, remember at 13 weeks old, he thinks he's the boss of the entire world. And why would he want to pee in a box when he can just pee everywhere? So it is not uncommon with different breeds, especially, honestly, sometimes we see with dwarfs, in my opinion, no offense to the dwarf lovers, they can be a little more challenging to get to buy into that practice. So first and foremost, I would talk with your veterinarian about what stage in the game could you neuter your munchkin. That is one of the first steps that I would recommend. And depending on their size and their overall health status, that may be something that you could do here in the next couple weeks or to a month. And a lot of times, while that's not a silver bullet, I've certainly seen, in my opinion, that'll increase the likelihood of you being able to train them. The other thing is to experiment with different types of positive reinforcements. Try different types of bedding. Try different types of litter box locations. There may be one particular thing that your munchkin just doesn't necessarily like associated with that, or they have it connected to, if I do this, that's a positive thing. Many, many times, as crazy as this scene, I've seen that if you put litter in the hay in the litter box, not litter in the hay box, hay in the litter box, that actually will draw or connect into there. Seems odd to me, but many rabbits, if they can munch away while pooping and peeing away, that seems to be their happy place. I also know that rabbit.org, House Rabbit Society, has got at least 2 articles that I've read about litter box training and other tips and tricks that you could potentially try. Talk to your vet about getting that neuter done right away. There's no harm in doing that at all. And then look at that environment and try to find the things that he enjoys or the treat he enjoys and reinforce that positive behavior. Oxbow, I know, also has a litter box training. I think we have a blog out there on our website with some good tips and tricks. Check that out as well. All right, I'm going to hop on to another question here. My rabbit well, I kind of got to that one, so let's skip over that one. We talked about sneezing. That's great. What's the best bunny food? What's the best bunny breed? Wow, I may be just a little bit jaded here. No doubt about it. Oxbow's the best, hands down. And I can even say that after recommending Oxbow's food as the first 5 years I was a veterinarian before I even knew anybody at Oxbow or worked here. But there is no other company that continues to spend as much time and effort and energy ensuring that the products that we feed and the nutrients that go into them are at the top premium. Absolutely. What's the best bunny breed? Well, that's kind of like asking what's the best dog breed. It depends a lot on you and your lifestyle. Every bunny has its own individual behavior, but when we look at certain breeds, whether it's size or shape, more likely to be active or less active, they have their own behaviors. I would really stop and think about, what is my home environment like? Am I somebody who just wants to sit on the couch all day and I work from home? Or am I somebody who's out and about all the time? Try to link that to the type of bunny that you're after. Do your research. Now again, there's lots of purebred bunnies. Those are awesome. But there's lots of those amazing what we call mutts, right? Just a mixture of whatever Mother Nature and whatever Mom and Dad Rabbit got together. Go and interact with them. Get a feel for what their personality is. Are they more laid back? Do they come to you? Are they more high strung? And does that fit with what you're after? I'm not really a big proponent of saying this breed is the best. Yes, I've had ones that I love that I think are super cute, Hotos and others, but I would really take the time to connect with that rabbit and find out if your personalities and their individual behaviors align to what you're after. All right, so I'm going to move on to EJ here. EJ, thanks for joining us. I've got 2 rabbits with chronic bladder sludge. That stinks. I am doing everything right with diet, hay, and supplements, and they still need flushes twice a year. Any ideas or other treatments? So, first and foremost, I applaud your efforts. Continue to fight the fight. We have a lot to learn when it comes to bladder sludge in these animals, even though we understand that the way they treat calcium, unfortunately, predisposes them to that. The first couple of buckets that I would really highlight, you're probably doing a lot of this, first of all, is diet. Sounds like you've got your hands around what you need to do in there. Secondary is hydration. Anything we can do to get fluids into their system is advantageous. A crock and a bottle wherever they go. Figure out how they like to drink their water and facilitate that water intake as best you can. Push, 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 push those dark leafy greens. Red leaf, green leaf, anything we can do with greens to get more hydration into their system. I even have some owners who take their pellets and actually mix a little bit of water in with it, or take a little bit of critical care and make it into almost a little bit of a critical care rabbit pellet slurry, almost a mash. What are we doing? Getting more hydration into their system. Let them graze and forage outside. If you've got a safe environment where they can graze and forage, not only are they active and moving around, they're getting more hydration into their system. Stimulate movement. The more they run, the more they bounce up that bladder, the more when they urinate, they're going to excrete that calcium sludge, that calcium sediment, and the more they're going to be stimulated to drink. The more physical movement we can do, the better. How many rabbits in the wild sit in one place and eat dry hay? None, right? Because they're constantly running around, constantly being active. Those are some tips and tricks and some things that I would certainly suggest that you try. Maybe dietary, you're already doing some of those. I also, not to jump on the bandwagon, we put together a great blog that talks about bladder sludge. You can find that on Oxbow's website as well. But try to do as proactive as you can with hydration and physical movement, ensuring that habitat that they're in that cage is kept clean. So there's really no reason that you don't want to constantly void that bladder. Good question. All right, I'm going to move on to another one here. This one comes from Bunny Blue. On average, how long do house rabbits live? I keep seeing Instabuns passing around 4 to 5 years. What? So I'm trying to prepare for the worst in advance. Well, 4 to 5 years is what I would call plain and simple unacceptable. I mean, that is certainly not what I would consider the norm. Now, every rabbit, just like every human being, is their own unique animal. Physically, genetically. So is it uncommon for a rabbit to potentially have an issue that they succumb to at 4 to 5? Unfortunately, that does happen. But through wellness and preventative care, absolutely through better education, rooted in what's nutritionally right for these animals, we are continually seeing rabbits live 10, 11, 12, 13, 14 years of age. I had a personal client of mine whose rabbit I just put to sleep a couple of months ago, who was a month short of 15. That rabbit is living that long because it's got an awesome mom who focuses on education, and she's taken the time to educate herself about nutrition and enrichment and physically stimulating those animals. So I would completely disagree that 4 to 5 years is average. Don't think anybody should accept that. Don't think about that. Really, 8, 9, 10, even 11, 12, that should really be what we're after, and really what I think is more of the normal behavior, normal lifespan in domestic rabbits if you're doing the things that you need to do. All right, so here's a question that comes from Victoria Kohler. Any helpful hints for a 4-year-old mini Rex with kidney failure? I'm so sorry to hear that. I'm currently giving fluids 3 times per week. Any other suggestions? Well, unfortunately, once we've gotten to the point of kidney failure, we know that a large percentage of the functional unit of the kidney, the glomeruli and other functional aspects, are gone. And unfortunately, we can't typically get those back. Once they're gone, they're gone. That damage is there. So our number one goal, which is what is alluding to what you're doing, is to support the functionality of those kidneys, to take as much pressure off of them as we possibly can to help them survive and sustain as long as we possibly can. Hydration is at the root of that. The more hydrated we keep them, the higher their hydration status is, the less hard their kidneys are going to have to work. Because what's the predominant job of the kidney? To reabsorb water. So hydration, not only orally, which is the best route, but certainly subcutaneously or other routes are certainly advantageous. I would also stay very, very conscientious of the quantity and the quality of the protein that you're feeding to your rabbit. The kidneys also have a job associated with excreting excess protein from the body. And if the protein quality or quantity doesn't align to what your munchkin needs, and there's higher levels of protein, that could potentially put extra pressure on the kidneys. Those are two easy dietary and hydration things. And then also recognize that when the kidneys are failing to do their job, that can have effects on other parts of the body. One of the things that we commonly see is what's called anemia, or a low red blood cell count, as the kidneys continue to fail to do their job. So talk to your veterinarian about, is additional wellness blood work indicated? Is there the potential that we've got low-grade anemia going on? And are there nutritional supplements or dietary supplements that we may want to consider to support that red blood cell count, knowing we cannot cure that renal disease? Horrible situation, especially at the age of 4. I'm really sad to hear that, but I wish you and your munchkin a lot of good luck moving forward. All right, I want to get to a couple more questions here. We're running a little bit short on time, but let's see here. This is a question that comes from Allison Renee Mansfield. I have to take a 10-hour car ride with my rabbit roommate for Thanksgiving. I threw in the roommate, but I thought it was cute. But I'm worried she won't eat or poop because she's so scared. She hates the car and freezes up when she's in her carrier. How can I make sure she doesn't go into stasis? Well, first and foremost, thinking proactively is where you need to be. And I say this with love, but I think we're already running up against a tight timeline. So the sooner we can start to do some of these things, the better. If you never got in much of a car ride and then suddenly you went 11 hours, that's brutal. So we want to do everything we can to begin to desensitize her to that car ride. Take her on car rides. As much as she may hate them now, the more frequently we can do them and show her that it's not the end of the world and that she gets to come home eventually, the more likely she's going to be set up for success and desensitized to the stress associated with that car ride. Work diligently to diminish the outside stresses of that car ride. Diminish the light, diminish the sound, diminish the other extraneous information that she's trying to say, what is it? Is it a threat? Do I have to worry about it? And then really think about, what are the things that she enjoys? What are the things that provide comfort to her? Build her literally a Timothy surround field, right? A force field. If she wants that entire cage to be coated in Timothy, to cuddle up in there, to constantly be munching, find out those things that provide comfort to her. Whatever her favorite toy is, whatever her favorite habitat, whatever furniture is in her habitat that you can take, the better. And for that matter, if you can take her entire habitat and load that bugger into your car, that is one less thing that is foreign to her, one less thing that is different. Now, that may not be feasible. You may not be able to get your huge habitat in the back of your smart car. I don't know. But anything you can do to decrease that change and decrease that stress. But the number one thing is short car rides ahead of time and slowly get her used to that. Now, some rabbits do better with a break, some rabbits don't. A 10-hour drive is a long time. A lot of animals, your best bet is just to get up and go, but you may find that taking a break along the way, getting her out of her habitat, giving her a little breather, might be something that she would enjoy. That's where that experimentation comes into play, and trying different things before you go to get on the road with her. As always, and I know you will, be prepared with anything you may need. Think about food, think about hydration, and if you're fearful of GI stasis, I don't want you to be, but if that's a concern, have some tools with you. Take a packet of critical care along with you. Take a syringe along with you. So in case she truly does shut down and stop eating, you've got what you need to keep fiber and hydration going into her system. All right, so we got one more quick question that I'll get to from Megan. Megan, thanks for being patient. What is safe to use around my house for scents, as in candles or wax melts for my bunny Luna, free roaming? Are just soy scents the best? I've been trying to figure this out for a while. I know my bunnies have way more sensitive scent receptors, so what can I do to make sure it's safe? This is an awesome question, and I don't think it's a question that I've really ever had before, to be honest with you. Now, I'm not actually aware of any research that's truly looked at the different ingredients that go into these candles and potential risks to the animal. Generally, though, the things that I would recommend to you is when we get into a lot of these aromatic, these specific oils, Sensi, and all these other ones that are really quite potent in terms of the aromatics, I would not recommend using any of those in an environment that your rabbit is going to be exposed to. Now, do I know there's a risk? No, but I know that to your point and what you alluded to, they are much more sensitive to aromas and aromatics than even potentially we are. The majority of typical candles that you would use in a home environment that we know are safe for humans, as long as they're not placed directly to their cage and they're simply in the ambient environment, I personally don't know that I would have any real significant concern with those. If you're not sure, look at the candle, and if you're not sure, contact the company. Talk to them specifically about what ingredients are in there and if there's any that should potentially be something to be concerned about. I know many of my owners that use candles and even potentially other types of those agents in their homes from time to time that don't have an issue, but I would recommend against the sensies, the aromatics, those specific types of essential oils per se, just knowing how potent they potentially are. Great question. So as always, thanks so much for joining everybody today. We hope everybody has learned a little bit, got some information you can take back to your home, share it with your friends, hop on Instagram, hop on Facebook, hop on all the other social media platforms that are out there. Let us know what you like about what we're doing. Let us know what you wish that we would do. And above all, get out and vote. Let's share our information with each other. Thanks so much for joining us. We look forward to seeing everybody next time. Take care. Bye-bye.